Before I continue my story, I want to ask you a favor. If you find this story interesting or helpful, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Whispered Vengeance. It helps more than you know, and it's the only way these stories reach people who might need to hear them. Now, let me tell you what happened. For 3 years, my younger brother called me every Tuesday at exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Every single week. Same day, same time, same questions. And for 3 years, I answered him honestly, thinking it was just brotherly concern. But yesterday, I decided to lie to him for the first time. That one lie changed everything, and I believe it might have saved both our lives. My name is Martin, and I'm 65 years old. I live in a small town in Pennsylvania, the same town where my brother Daniel and I grew up, though Danny left for Chicago 30 years ago and built himself a successful life there. I spent my career as a firefighter, 37 years putting out fires and pulling people from burning buildings. I retired 3 years ago with a decent pension, bought myself a little ranch house on Maple Street, and settled into what I thought would be a quiet life. I take care of my small garden, I play cards with the guys on Friday nights, and I see my daughter and grandkids about once a month. It's a simple life, and I like it that way. Danny, he took a different path. He moved to Chicago right after college, worked his way up in commercial real estate, married a wonderful woman named Patricia, and made more money than Dad ever dreamed possible. We stayed close, though, despite the distance. We'd talk on holidays, he'd visit once or twice a year, and I'd go to Chicago for Thanksgiving. Danny was always the worrier of the family, always checking in, always making sure everyone was okay. Mom used to say he got that from her side, the anxious genes. Everything changed 2.5 years ago. I had what the doctors called a mild heart attack. Honestly, I didn't even realize that's what it was at the time. I was working in the garden, felt some chest tightness, broke out in a cold sweat, and figured I'd overdone it in the heat. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, found me sitting on my porch looking pale and insisted on driving me to the hospital. Turned out my instincts were wrong and hers were right. The doctors said I was lucky, that it was minor, that with some medication and lifestyle changes, I'd be fine. They put me on blood pressure medication, told me to watch my diet, get some exercise, and come back for regular checkups. I called Danny from the hospital to let him know what happened. I tried to play it down, told him it was nothing serious, that I was already feeling better, but I could hear the panic in his voice. He wanted to fly out immediately. I talked him out of it, assured him I was fine, that my daughter Lisa was already there with me. He made me promise to call him every day until I was back home and settled. I did, and after about a week, we went back to our normal schedule of talking every couple of weeks. Then Patricia died. It was sudden and brutal. She had a heart attack while Danny was away on a business trip. She was only 60 years old. She'd been feeling tired that day, told her neighbor she thought she was coming down with something, and went to lie down. The neighbor found her 6 hours later when she came by to drop off some books. The paramedics said she'd been gone for at least 4 hours by then. Danny flew home to an empty house and a wife who died alone, with no one there to call for help, no one to hold her hand, no one to tell her it would be okay. The funeral was the hardest thing I'd ever attended. Danny was destroyed. He'd always been the composed one, the successful one, the one who had everything figured out. But standing at Patricia's grave, he looked like a lost child. He kept saying the same thing over and over. I should have been there. I should have known something was wrong. Why didn't she call me? Why didn't I call her that day? I stayed with him in Chicago for 2 weeks after the funeral. We didn't talk much. We'd sit in his living room, drink coffee, and exist in the same space. Sometimes that's all you can do for someone who's grieving. Before I left, I hugged him and told him to call me anytime, day or night. He nodded, but his eyes were somewhere else, somewhere far away. The Tuesday calls started exactly 1 month after Patricia's funeral. The first call came at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was watching a baseball game when my phone rang. Hey, Danny, I answered. How are you holding up? Martin. His voice sounded strange, tight. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Just watching the game. Are you okay? Are you feeling all right? No chest pains? No shortness of breath? I frowned at the television. No, I'm fine. Why? No dizziness? You're not sweating or feeling nauseous? Danny, I'm completely fine. What's going on? There was a pause. I just needed to check. I worry about you, after what happened. I appreciate that, but I'm good. The doctor says my heart is doing fine with the medication. You're taking the medication every day, right? You're not missing doses? Every morning like clockwork. Danny, seriously, I'm okay. He let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it. Okay, good. That's good. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing in particular, and then he let me go. I thought it was a one-time thing, that he was having a rough day and needed reassurance. But the next Tuesday, at exactly 3 o'clock, my phone rang again. Martin, how are you feeling today? I'm fine, Danny. Any symptoms? Chest pain? Shortness of breath? Irregular heartbeat? No, nothing. I feel great. This became our routine. Every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, Danny would call with the same questions. At first, I found it touching that he cared so much. Then, it started to feel a little excessive. By the 3rd month, I was getting annoyed. Danny, you don't need to call every week to check on me, I told him one Tuesday. I promise I'll call you if anything's wrong. I know. I just feel better hearing your voice, knowing you're okay. I understand, but I'm a grown man. I can take care of myself. I know you can. There was something in his voice, something desperate. Just humor me, okay? It helps me. What could I say to that? My brother was still grieving his wife. If calling me once a week made him feel better, I could spare 15 minutes. So, I let it continue. But it didn't stay at 15 minutes or simple questions. Over the months, the calls got longer and more detailed. Danny didn't just ask if I was okay anymore. He wanted specifics. What's your blood pressure this morning? Danny, I don't check it every day. You should be checking it every day. I'm sending you a home blood pressure monitor. And he did. A week later, a box arrived with a fancy digital blood pressure monitor inside. Did you get the monitor? He asked the next Tuesday. Yeah, I got it. Good. Can you take your blood pressure for me now? Right now? Please, Martin. It'll just take a minute. I sighed, pulled the monitor out of the box, and figured out how to use it. 120/80. That's good. That's a healthy range. Make sure you're checking it every morning and writing it down. I want you to tell me the numbers every week. It escalated from there. He sent me a pill organizer and made me promise to use it. He wanted to know what I was eating, how much I was exercising, if I was getting enough sleep. He asked about my last doctor's appointment and made me promise to schedule another one. When I told him I had a follow-up scheduled for 2 months away, he said that wasn't soon enough. You need to be seen at least every 3 months, Martin. I'll find you a better cardiologist. I don't need a better cardiologist. Dr. Morrison is fine. I'm just trying to help. I know, but you're being a bit much, Danny. He went quiet for a moment. I just don't want anything to happen to you. And there it was, the pain underneath all of it. He'd lost his wife to a heart attack, and now he couldn't stop worrying that he'd lose me the same way. I understood the fear, but understanding didn't make it any less smothering. The calls continued, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock. I could set my watch by them. If I happened to be out running errands, I'd see his name on my screen at 3:01. If I was in the middle of something, it didn't matter. The phone would ring at 3 o'clock on the dot. Then came last month, and things took a turn I didn't see coming. I'd gone to the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon, lost track of time in the produce section, debating between green beans and asparagus, and didn't get home until 3:30. I had 2 missed calls from Danny and a voicemail that sounded frantic. Martin, where are you? Call me back immediately. I'm worried sick. I called him back as I was unloading groceries. Thank God, he said when he answered. Where were you? At the store. I forgot to bring my phone in with me. Sorry about that. You forgot your phone? Martin, you can't do that. What if something happened? What if you had chest pains in the store and couldn't call anyone? Then I'd tell someone in the store to call an ambulance. Danny, I'm fine. How do I know that? You could be lying to me right now. That struck me as odd. Why would I lie to you? People do that when they're sick. They don't want others to worry, so they say they're fine when they're not. Are you having any symptoms right now? Be honest with me. No symptoms. I'm completely healthy. I'm standing in my kitchen, putting away milk and eggs. Everything is normal. He was quiet for a long moment. Promise me you'll always answer when I call on Tuesdays. Please, Martin. I need to know you're okay. Danny, this is getting out of hand. Please. For me. I ran my hand through my hair, frustrated but also heartbroken for him. Fine, I promise. But that promise didn't make things better. It made them worse. 2 weeks later, my doorbell rang around 10 in the morning. I opened it to find my neighbor from 3 houses down, Ed Peterson, standing on my porch looking uncomfortable. Hey, Ed, what's up? Hey, Martin. Listen, this is a little awkward, but your brother Danny called me this morning. I blinked. He called you? How does he even have your number? Ed shifted his weight. Apparently, he looked up neighbors on some website and found my number. He wanted to make sure you were okay. Said he'd tried calling you this morning, and you didn't answer. I was in the shower. Jesus Christ. He called my neighbor? He seemed really worried. Asked if I could check on you, make sure you were still breathing. Ed laughed, but it was uncomfortable. I told him you were probably just busy, but he insisted I come over. So here I am. You're obviously fine. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm so sorry he bothered you with this. It's no problem, but maybe you should talk to him? He sounded pretty worked up. After Ed left, I called Danny immediately. Why are you calling my neighbors? I tried calling you 4 times this morning and you didn't answer. I was worried. So you called Ed Peterson? Danny, that's not normal behavior. I needed to know you were okay. I was in the shower. People take showers, Danny. They don't answer their phones every single time someone calls. What if you'd fallen in the shower? What if you were lying on the bathroom floor having a heart attack and couldn't reach your phone? Then I'd still be lying there. And Ed knocking on my door wouldn't help. He has a key, Danny said quietly. Everything stopped. What did you say? Ed has a key to your house. I sent him one a few months ago. I pay him $200 a month to keep an eye on you and to check on you if I can't reach you. I sat down heavily on my couch. You did what? I needed to make sure someone could get to you if something happened. You gave my neighbor a key to my house without asking me? I knew you'd say no. You're damn right I would have said no. Danny, that's my home. You can't just hand out keys to my house. That's not okay. I'm trying to keep you safe. No, you're trying to control me. There's a difference. He was quiet for a moment. I just don't want to lose you too. And there it was again, the grief that was eating him alive. But grief didn't give him the right to invade my privacy like this. You need to ask Ed for that key back, I said firmly. And you need to stop calling my neighbors. Martin, no. This crosses a line. I love you, but this has to stop. He agreed, reluctantly. I thought that would be the end of it. But 3 days later, I got a strange phone call from Dr. Morrison's office. The receptionist said my brother had called, asking for details about my last visit and my current health status. I didn't give him any information, of course, she said. HIPAA laws prevent that. But he was quite persistent, said he was worried about you. I just thought you should know. I was furious. I called Danny immediately. Did you call my doctor's office? I just wanted to make sure you'd actually been to your appointment. You said everything was fine. But I needed to verify it. Verify it? Danny, you can't do that. That's a violation of my privacy. I'm your brother. I have a right to know if you're sick. No, you don't. Not unless I choose to tell you. We argued for 20 minutes. He didn't see why I was so upset. He was just worried about me, just trying to help. Why was I being so difficult? Why wouldn't I let him take care of me? Because I don't need you to take care of me, I said. I'm not a child, and I'm not dying. You need to let this go. But he couldn't let it go. The Tuesday calls continued, more insistent than ever. Then last week, something happened that made me realize just how serious this situation had become. I was at Lisa's house helping her paint her kitchen when Danny called at 3 o'clock. I stepped outside to answer. Hey, Danny, where are you? You sound like you're outside. I'm at Lisa's. Helping her paint. You're painting? Martin, you shouldn't be doing physical labor like that. The fumes from the paint, the exertion. It's a kitchen. I'm not climbing Mount Everest. Do you have chest pains? Is your breathing labored? No, I'm completely fine. Put Lisa on the phone. What? I want to talk to Lisa. Put her on the phone. Why do you want to talk to Lisa? I need to tell her to watch for symptoms. If you start showing signs of distress, she needs to call 911 immediately. Danny, for God's sake. Put her on the phone, Martin. I hung up. I actually hung up on him. My phone immediately started ringing again. I didn't answer. It rang 4 more times, then stopped. 5 minutes later, Lisa came outside, looking confused. Dad? Uncle Danny just called me. He said you hung up on him and he's worried you might be having a heart attack. Are you okay? I sat down on her porch steps and put my head in my hands. Your uncle is losing his mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about Danny, about how much he'd changed since Patricia died, about how his grief had twisted into something dark and consuming. I thought about Patricia's death, about how she'd been alone, how no one had known she was in trouble until it was too late. I understood why that haunted him. But understanding his pain didn't change the fact that his behavior was becoming unbearable. More than that, it was becoming intrusive in a way that scared me. He'd given my neighbor a key. He'd tried to get medical information from my doctor. He was calling my daughter. What would he do next? Would he try to get some kind of conservatorship over me? Try to have me declared incompetent so he could make medical decisions for me? I'd heard stories about things like that. Adult children or family members who used fear and manipulation to take control of an elderly person's life. But Danny was my brother. He loved me. He wouldn't do that to me, would he? The next morning, I did something I'm not proud of. I went to my filing cabinet and looked through my important documents. Everything seemed to be there. My will, my bank statements, the deed to my house, my insurance policies. Nothing was missing. Nothing had been tampered with. I felt ridiculous for even checking. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. Tucked in the back of my file folder for medical documents was a legal form I didn't recognize. I pulled it out and read the heading, Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare. The form was filled out in Danny's handwriting, naming him as my healthcare agent with the power to make medical decisions on my behalf if I became incapacitated. At the bottom was a signature line for me, but it was blank. I sat there, staring at this document, my hands shaking. When had Danny put this in my files? Had he done it during his last visit, 8 months ago? Had he been going through my documents while I was in the other room? And why had he filled it out, but not had me sign it? Was he planning to forge my signature? Or was he waiting for the right moment to convince me to sign it? I thought about all the Tuesday calls, all the questions about my health, the key he'd given Ed, the call to my doctor's office. I thought about how he'd escalated over the past year, becoming more controlling, more invasive. What was his endgame here? That's when I decided I needed to know what my brother was really up to, and I needed evidence. I took the power of attorney form and hid it in a different location. Then I set up a plan. The next Tuesday, I would test him. I would lie to him for the first time and see how he reacted. If my suspicions were wrong, if this really was just grief and anxiety, he'd be concerned but reasonable. But if I was right, if there was something more calculated going on, he'd reveal himself. Tuesday came. I spent the morning anxious, second-guessing myself. Was I being paranoid? Was I betraying my brother's trust by testing him like this? But then I remembered the unsigned power of attorney form hidden in my files, and I knew I had to do this. At 3 o'clock, my phone rang. Hey, Danny. Martin. How are you feeling today? Actually, not great. There was an immediate shift in his voice, a sharpening. What do you mean? What's wrong? I woke up with some chest tightness this morning. It's probably nothing, just muscle strain from helping Lisa paint, but it's been bothering me all day. Chest tightness? Martin, that's a symptom. Have you taken your blood pressure? Not yet. Like I said, it's probably just sore muscles. You need to take your blood pressure right now and check your pulse. Are you sweating? Do you feel nauseous? No, I'm just a little uncomfortable. I want you to hang up and call 911. Danny, I don't need an ambulance. You're having chest pains. You need to be evaluated immediately. It's not chest pain, it's chest tightness. There's a difference. Martin, you could be having a heart attack right now and not realize it. That's how people die. They think it's nothing. And by the time they realize how serious it is, it's too late. Please, call 911. I'm not calling 911 for sore muscles. Then I will. And he hung up. My heart started pounding. He wouldn't actually call 911, would he? But 5 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find two paramedics standing there with concerned expressions. Mr. Hayes, we got a call from your brother in Chicago. He said you're experiencing chest pains and refusing to seek treatment. I stared at them, stunned. I'm sorry you came out here. I'm not having chest pains. I have a little muscle soreness from painting, and I mentioned it to my brother. He overreacted. The older paramedic nodded, sympathetically. Would you mind if we check your vitals, just to be safe? Your brother was very insistent. I let them in and submitted to their examination. Blood pressure normal, pulse normal, oxygen levels normal, no signs of cardiac distress. They seemed satisfied, but suggested I follow up with my doctor if the discomfort persisted. After they left, my phone rang again. Danny, the paramedic said you're fine. How do you know what they said? I called the dispatch center to get an update. Danny, this has gone too far. You lied to me, he said, his voice cold. You said you had chest tightness, but there's nothing wrong with you. Why would you lie to me about something like that? My throat went dry. How do you know I was lying? Because your vitals are perfect, the paramedics confirmed it. So either you lied to me, or you're having psychosomatic symptoms, which means you're not mentally stable enough to be making your own medical decisions. There it was, the trap I'd walked right into. I'd lied to test him, and now he was using that lie against me. I need to go, I said. We need to talk about this. If you're having false symptoms, that's a serious problem. It could be early dementia, or... I hung up. My hands were shaking. I sat down at my kitchen table and tried to think clearly. Danny had just called paramedics to my house without my consent. He'd called the dispatch center to get information about my medical evaluation. He'd accused me of being mentally unstable, and he had an unsigned power of attorney form hidden in my documents. This wasn't just grief. This was something else. I called my daughter. Lisa, I need to tell you something about Uncle Danny. I explained everything. The Tuesday calls, the key he'd given Ed, the call to my doctor, the power of attorney form, and what had just happened with the paramedics. Lisa listened in silence. Dad, I think Uncle Danny needs professional help. This sounds like severe anxiety, maybe even obsessive-compulsive disorder. He's not thinking rationally. I know, but I'm worried it's more than that. What if he's trying to have me declared incompetent? What if he's planning to use that power of attorney somehow? He can't do that without your signature. And he definitely can't do it without a doctor's evaluation showing you're not competent. You're clearly fine. But what if he's setting me up? What if he's documenting all these symptoms I'm having, making it look like I'm declining? Lisa was quiet for a moment. Do you really think Uncle Danny would do that to you? I don't know what to think anymore. She made me promise to call her every day. She also suggested I talk to a lawyer, just to be safe. I agreed. But first, I needed to understand what was really going on with my brother. I decided to do some research. I called Patricia's sister, Margaret, who I'd met several times over the years. I asked her how Danny had been doing since Patricia's death. Honestly, Martin, I'm worried about him, she said. He's become obsessed with medical issues. He goes to the doctor constantly, convinced he's having heart problems just like Patricia. They've run every test imaginable, and he's perfectly healthy, but he doesn't believe them. He insists something is wrong, that they're missing something. Has he seen a therapist? I suggested it a few months ago, and he exploded at me, said there was nothing wrong with his mind, that his concerns were valid, that everyone was minimizing his feelings. We haven't spoken since. After I hung up with Margaret, I sat there processing this information. Danny was having health anxiety so severe he was getting constant medical tests despite being healthy. And he'd projected that anxiety onto me, turning his fear of illness into a need to control every aspect of my health. But that didn't explain the power of attorney form. That felt premeditated, calculated. I decided I needed to confront him directly. I needed to see his face when I asked him about it, needed to hear his explanation. So I did something impulsive. I booked a flight to Chicago for the next morning. I didn't tell Danny I was coming. I just showed up at his condo in downtown Chicago around noon. When he opened the door and saw me standing there, his face went through several emotions. Surprise, confusion, and then something that looked like fear. "Martin, what are you doing here? Are you okay? Did something happen? We need to talk." "Can I come in?" He stepped aside, and I walked into his home for the first time since Patricia's funeral. The place was immaculate, almost sterile. Everything was in its place. There were pill organizers on the kitchen counter, at least 6 of them. Medical journals stacked on the coffee table. A blood pressure monitor sitting next to the couch. "You flew here without telling me?" Danny said, his voice rising. "You got on a plane? The pressure changes? The stress on your cardiovascular system." "Sit down, Danny." Something in my voice made him stop. He sat down on the couch. I sat in the chair across from him and pulled the power of attorney form out of my bag. "Why did you put this in my files?" His face went pale. "Where did you find that?" "In my medical documents file. You put it there during your last visit, didn't you? When I was outside grilling and you said you needed to use the bathroom." He didn't deny it. "I was going to talk to you about it." "Were you? Or were you going to wait until you documented enough concerning symptoms to convince a doctor I wasn't competent to make my own decisions?" "That's not what I was doing." "Then what were you doing?" He stood up and started pacing. "I need to know you'll be taken care of if something happens. I need to be able to make sure you get the right medical treatment, that you don't refuse care because you're stubborn or scared or in denial. That's my choice to make. Not if you're having a heart attack. Not if you're dying and too confused to understand what's happening. Like Patricia." He stopped pacing. His whole body went rigid. "That's what this is about, isn't it?" I said quietly. "Patricia died alone, and you weren't there. You couldn't help her. So now you're trying to make sure you'll be there for me, that you'll be able to control the situation if something happens." "I should have been there," he whispered. "I should have known something was wrong. I should have called her that morning. If I had just called her, if I had just checked in, she might have told me she wasn't feeling well. I could have told her to go to the hospital. I could have saved her. You don't know that." "I should have tried." His voice cracked. "I was her husband. It was my job to protect her, and I failed. I was 800 miles away making money while my wife died alone on our couch." I stood up and moved closer to him. "Danny, Patricia's death wasn't your fault." "Then whose fault was it? She was fine in the morning. I talked to her before my flight. She said she loved me, and I said I'd see her in 2 days, and then she was gone. Just gone. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. No chance to tell her all the things I should have told her every single day." He was crying now, really crying, in a way I'd never seen him cry before. Not even at the funeral. "I can't lose you too," he said. "I can't. You're all I have left. Dear, Mom and Dad are gone, Patricia's gone, and you're the only family I have. And every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, I call you to make sure you're still alive, to make sure I haven't lost you too, to make sure I'm not going to get a call from a stranger telling me you died alone while I was somewhere else not paying attention." I pulled my brother into a hug, and he sobbed against my shoulder like a child. We stood there, in his too-clean living room, surrounded by all his medical equipment and fear, and I realized how badly he'd been drowning in his grief. "I'm not dying," I said gently. "I had a mild heart attack 2 years ago, and I'm fine now. The doctors confirmed that. You need to believe them. But what if they're wrong? What if they missed something? Then they missed something. But you can't live your life like this, Danny. You can't control everything. You can't prevent every possible tragedy. I have to try." "No, you don't. You have to let go." He pulled back and wiped his eyes. "I don't know how. I think you need to talk to someone. A therapist, a grief counselor, someone who can help you process Patricia's death and this anxiety you're struggling with. There's nothing wrong with being concerned about your health. There is when you're calling paramedics because I mentioned sore muscles. There is when you're calling my doctor's office and my neighbors and my daughter. There is when you're hiding legal documents in my files without my permission. Danny, this isn't concern. This is something else. And you need help. He sat down heavily. I'm not crazy. I didn't say you were crazy. I said you need help. There's a difference. We talked for 3 more hours. I told him about the toll his Tuesday calls had taken on me, how smothered I felt, how his behavior had started to scare me. He told me about the sleepless nights, the constant worry, the panic attacks he'd been having. He admitted he'd been to the emergency room 4 times in the past 6 months, convinced he was having a heart attack, only to be told it was anxiety. Margaret said, "You won't see a therapist," I said. "I don't need therapy. I need people to understand that I'm just trying to protect the people I love. By invading their privacy and trying to control their medical care." He didn't have an answer for that. I stayed in Chicago for 3 days. We talked more. I met with Margaret, and the 3 of us sat down together. Danny was defensive at first, insisting he was fine, that everyone was overreacting. But slowly, as Margaret and I shared our concerns and experiences, he started to listen. On my last night there, he finally admitted it. "Maybe I do need help." "I think that would be good," I said. "But I'm still going to worry about you." "I know, and I'll still answer when you call. But Danny, you can't call me every Tuesday at 3 o'clock for the rest of our lives. You can't make your grief and anxiety my burden to carry. I don't know what else to do. You get help. You process Patricia's death with a professional. You learn to live with uncertainty instead of trying to eliminate it." He agreed to find a therapist. Margaret offered to help him find one and go to the first appointment with him if he wanted. He said he'd think about it. I flew home the next morning. Danny called me later that day, not at 3 o'clock, but at 6 in the evening. "I found a therapist," he said. "I have an appointment next week." "That's good, Danny. I'm proud of you. She specializes in grief and anxiety." Margaret sent me her information. "How do you feel about it?" "Terrified," he admitted. "But also, maybe a little relieved? I'm so tired, Martin. I'm tired of being scared all the time." "I know." We talked for a few more minutes, and before we hung up, he said, "I'm sorry for all of it. The key, the calls to your doctor, the power of attorney form. I was so focused on not losing you that I didn't see how much I was hurting you. I forgive you," I said. And I meant it. That was a month ago. Danny has been seeing his therapist twice a week. He still calls me on Tuesdays, but now it's at different times, and we talk about normal things. How his therapy is going, what he's been doing, memories of Patricia. He asks how I'm doing, but not in that desperate, probing way. Just like a brother checking in with his brother. He still worries. I know he does. But he's learning to sit with that worry instead of trying to control everything around him. His therapist told him that his anxiety about my health was really about his fear of loss, his fear of being alone, his guilt over Patricia's death. He's working through those feelings now, slowly. Last week, I got a letter from Danny with a check inside. For Ed Peterson, the note said, to compensate him for his time and to apologize for putting him in an awkward position. I also enclosed a letter for Ed, explaining everything. I hope you'll give them to him. I did. Ed accepted both graciously and said he was glad to hear Danny was getting help. I've also been going to therapy myself. My doctor suggested it after I told her what had happened. She said that being on the receiving end of someone's anxiety can be traumatic too, that I needed space to process my own feelings about the situation. She was right. I had a lot of anger I didn't want to acknowledge because I felt guilty for being angry at my grieving brother. But anger and compassion can coexist. I can be angry about how Danny's behavior affected me while also having empathy for his pain. Today is Tuesday, and I'm sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee, waiting to see when Danny calls. It's 2 in the afternoon. He might call at 3 out of habit, or he might call at 4, or maybe tonight. I don't know anymore, and that's okay. What I've learned from all of this is that love can become toxic when it's mixed with fear and control. Danny loved me so much that he tried to manage every aspect of my existence, and in doing so, He nearly destroyed our relationship. But I've also learned that people can heal, that recognizing the problem is the first step toward fixing it. Danny is not a bad person. He's a hurt person who didn't know how to handle his pain. And sometimes hurt people hurt others, not out of malice, but out of desperation. The question is whether they're willing to acknowledge the harm and do the work to change. Danny is doing that work now. My phone rings. It's 3:30. I smile and answer. Hey, Danny. Hey, I know I'm late. I was in session and it ran over. That's okay. How'd it go? Hard. We talked about Patricia today, about the guilt. But good, I think. Really good. I'm glad. We talked for 20 minutes about his therapy, about the support group for widowers he joined, about a book his therapist recommended. Before we hang up, he says, Martin, I just want you to know I love you. I love you too, Danny. And I'm glad you lied to me that Tuesday. If you hadn't, I might never have realized how bad things had gotten. That lie probably saved both of us. He's right. Sometimes lying is wrong, but sometimes a lie is a mirror that forces someone to see what they've become. My lie wasn't meant to deceive, it was meant to reveal. And it worked. As I sit here watching the sun set over my quiet street, I'm grateful. Grateful that Danny is getting help. Grateful that our relationship is healing. Grateful that I had the courage to confront the situation instead of just letting it consume us both. Life is uncertain. Bad things happen to good people. We can't control everything, no matter how hard we try. All we can do is love each other, support each other, and know when to ask for help. And answer the phone on Tuesdays, even when it's not at 3 o'clock.